Well, hello, my baby gorillas, and I'm just about to get lambasted in the paper for asking Mr. Sarwar about the protection of children. Now, I'm not blaming Mr. Sarwar for anything. I'm not accusing him of doing anything. However, I was asking him general genetic questions. And let's see if I have actually played this wrong. I may.
And the fact that they said there was going to be.
So this is me. This was me not scheduling this meeting or going down to actually see Mr. Sarwar. Unfortunately, MPs are now not actually allowing people to ask them questions who are out with the mainstream media. And what the mainstream media are doing is if you do ask them any awkward questions, you're getting lambasted. So obviously I'm going to get smeared in the paper as usual. Just for the record, I don't think Mr. Sarwar is a different race. I don't believe in race-based politics. And I don't think that I said anything with regards to race in connection with Mr. Sarwar. I have no problem. I've lived with Pakistani guys and I've interacted. There's no issue even with Pakistani people generally. What I was discussing with them was certain things that were actually happening and what had actually happened. So let's see if I made a mistake and was too abrupt in my questioning, and let's see if I was incorrect and inaccurate in the way I was discussing things. And I'll cross-reference this and where I was coming from with what I was actually saying.
Mr. Sarwar, did you think you were racist when you were talking about the actual people in Glasgow?
Sorry, that was me badly framing this. So, what I was actually meaning was the conversation. Obviously, we know that Hamza Yusuf was doing the speaking about the white people in a sort of derogatory way as well. But apparently, me challenging race-based politics is me being racist. So I'm not quite sure if that's correct. See, I don't believe in identity politics. I don't believe that people who don't look like me are a different race. So I don't believe that we should be judging people based on arbitrary characteristics. That's my sort of view. Although I'm going to be lambasted as a racist in the papers tomorrow. That I don't believe people are racist. But what the left seem to be doing is putting Islam in the race category and not actually examining the underlying issues in Islam and what they actually mean. They just want you to shut down the conversation. If anybody discusses Islam, not race or identity or even skin colour, about Islam, the conversation's to be shut down. The media are then going to target you to actually then make up stories and destroy you and call you all these nasty words, such as racist. And but I never, in this interview, I never discussed Mr. Sarwar's race, or I don't believe Mr. Sarwar is a different race to anybody else in the planet. So I don't believe in race-based politics. It appears that the identitarians of the left believe in race-based politics because they're always talking about race. I don't believe it. I think people should be judged on what they believe and what the content of their character. So that's what I believe. But as I said, the mainstream media are going to play the race card again. But let's see which I think is a racist speech. We'll see this.
Every chief executive of every council and every government department, white. Every director of a department in Scotland, white. Every principal of a college or university in Scotland, white. Every head teacher in Scotland, white. Every chair of a public sector body in Scotland, white. Every High Court judge in Scotland, white. Every present governor in Scotland, white. Every editor of a news organisation in Scotland, white. Why?
Now, to put in context, from the census, I think there's 96% of the population are white. I think 90% are Scottish. So it's not unusual. It's a bit like me going to Pakistan and saying, why is all these brown people here? I wouldn't do that. I just wouldn't do that. I wouldn't express myself that way. And I think this is Mr. Sawa expressing a sort of race-based politics, which I don't agree with. I don't believe in race-based politics or racialised politics or identity politics either. So that's fair enough. That's why I asked Mr. Sarwar that question. I misphrased it and I didn't phrase it properly because it was a bit of a rushed environment here. So let's continue with this.
There's too many white people in Scotland.
So there's too many white people. Sorry, what I should have said was there was too many white people in positions in Scotland. So you would have to if there's 4% non-white, and I think people, I know and was with people from many different backgrounds who excelled in Scotland. They've become lawyers, doctors, and they've all excelled. There's Mr. Salwa, who is the leader of the Labour Party. We've got Hamza Useless as the leader, as the Crown, as the Justice Secretary. So I don't think we should kid on that people are not excelling in Scotland, regardless of this identity politics that the left, whether it be the Labour, the Greens, illiberal Liberals, and the SNP are trying to bring in just now.
There's too many white people in the constituency.
Not sure I ever said that.
Can you tell us about the child rape laws in Pakistan, please?
So what I was talking about here, and I was trying to lead on to the actual the points that I was trying to raise, was children. So this is the Washington Post. Bill banning child marriage fails in Pakistan. So I was trying to find out from Mr. Sawa what Mr. Sawa's opinion of this was. And obviously it's concerning if child marriage is brought in here, because obviously that's illegal. So this is in the Independent. It's hardly right-wing sources. Pakistani bill aimed to ban child marriage shot down as anti-Islamic and blasphemous. So the proposed legislation would have seen, so what they're saying is it's against Islam. So to have child marriage, which we would call child abuse, that is Islamic, and anybody that speaks against that is blasphemous against child marriage, which would be child abuse here. So that's obviously concerning. I think the protection of children is obviously concerning. So the proposed legislation would see harsher punishments given to those entering conjugal contracts with minors, basically child marriage. And obviously in Islam, the Prophet Muhammad was 50 when he was he married Aisha when she was 6 and consummated the marriage at 9. So I mean that's incredible to be brought in Scotland. So that's basically where I was going with that line of questioning. A move to ban child marriage in Pakistan has been withdrawn after meeting staunch resistance from the religious body. Now, Mr. Sawar family were governors in Pakistan, so this is why I was asking him the questions with regards to this, to find out what his thoughts were on child marriage in Pakistan. So, and which I think any right-minded person would think that this was objectionable, which branded the bill anti-Islamic. So it's Islamic to marry children, and basically based on the Quran, which is correct. The ruling party politicians who introduced the bill, Marvin Mellon of Pakistan Muslim League Party, withdrew it after the Council of Islamic Ideology dubbed the bill blasphemous. Now, I think the punishment for blasphemy is death and can lead to death in Pakistan. The CII unanimously rejected the proposed marriage bill Restraint Amendment Bill 2014 on purely religious grounds, reports the Express Tribunal. CII Chairman Mohammed Keen Shireen said the bill contradicted Islamic teachings. He said Parliament cannot create legislation that is against the teachings of the Holy Quran or Sunnah. The proposed legislation recommends giving out harsher punishments to those entering marriage with minors, as well as raising the minimum age of marriage for women to 18. The current minimum age for marriage is 16 for women and 18 for men. The lawsuit stipulates that marriage restriction in 1929 has been ruled by the CII as non-compliant to Islamic law in May 2014. So this is basically just what I was asking him. And it was a bit rushed because obviously he was trying to do another interview, which I waited for patiently and did that as well. The council reiterated its earlier ruling that girls as young as 9, which again goes back to Aisha in the Quran, were eligible for marriage if the signs of puberty are visible, again back from the Quran. So that's basically the line of questioning I was asking him. So let's continue.
And the fact that they said it was going to be anti-Islamic. Anti-Islamic, sir. No, I mean.
So I'm asking him a serious question. He was being a bit flippant there, to be brutally honest.
Serious, I'm being serious. Obviously, in Pakistan, they said it was un-Islamic not to rape kids and they said it was blasphemous.
Well, which would have been true, which is child rape, basically having sex with a 9-year-old.
To complain against that?
Or getting married to a 9-year-old.
I think your questions say more about you, sir, than they do about me.
So it's not about me. It's not about what it says about me. I've just put it out in the Independent, which is hardly a right-wing source. It's not about what I think. It's about what's in the actual text of the Quran and how it's implemented in Islamic countries. So it's not about me. It's nothing to do with me. It's about me just reiterating what's in the Independent, basically.
No, I'm asking you a question. It's in the Independent, though. It's not really an answer, though.
It wasn't really an answer.
I think your question says more about you.
So it says more about me than it does about him, which is he's saying he's a Muslim and following Sharia or following the Quran, and this is where he comes from as part of Islamic culture. So I'm not talking about anything about his race, obviously but it's more to do with Islam than it is to do with anything about him ethnically, not even racially, but ethnically even. Nothing to do with that. And obviously there's Christians and Sikhs and Hindus in Pakistan as well.
2 minutes, 2 minutes.
So I think this is Channel 4. Obviously I'm polite with other people there as well.
Carry on.
Coming out. Thank you. Sorry, switching that way, please. Me to that way. Baby number 1 or 2 for you? Number 2. How old the other one?
So obviously the collusion here with the papers, which will now smear me, asking him questions that I'm just showing you that are completely valid. It just shows you. So my question was valid and was based on the Independent.
3-year-old and how many weeks? 6 weeks.
have a greater. So, like Daily Record and The Sun, who are going to lambast me tomorrow, have decided to besmirch another journalist, basically doing the same thing and asking political questions about political Islam, which Mr. Sawar says he's following. But apparently, that's me a racist.
Like statement himself, or was it?
I don't know where he is, but
In Elgin?
Right, the gentleman again, please.
Mr. Sawar was talking to two nice Sikh gentlemen.
The gentleman.
what times do you need the title?
And that's Sawar leader of the Scottish Labour.
That's fine.
You good?
Can you just say something, sir, please? Sorry.
And that's Sawar, leader of the Scottish Labour Party. Grateful it's not raining, and relieved I don't have a 7-week old
Tomorrow there's a table of no confidence. Tomorrow there's a motion of no confidence table in Nicholas. You now going to withdraw.
So obviously, Anis Sawar has now in the Labour Party abstained yesterday, which to me was very sort of cowardly on the back of the fact that Nicola Sturgeon did mislead Parliament. But it looks like the left parties, the Liberal Party, the Greens, SNP and now Labour are all in bed together, virtually.
Look, it's not our
They are from social issues, so they've got a lot of things in common, from the mismanagement of the economy, the mismanagement of Scotland, and Sawar basically backed Nicola Sturgeon there.
to withdraw. It's a Conservative Party. Look, we've never said that we were supporting the vote in the conference. That is something we said we would consider after the two committee inquiry reports are published. We didn't want to prejudge the committee inquiries. Obviously, we've had the Hamilton inquiry published today. We still have the committee inquiry published tomorrow, and we'll see whether we believe the First Minister is going to follow. There are still some serious questions that need to be answered around the role of the First Minister, whether we have a robust harassment policy, why we have the misuse of public funds, the respect for Parliament, the institutions that we have in our country, and also the role of the Lord Advocate. These are all step big issues that need to be addressed.
You accept every word.
Look, I acknowledge the report. It's a committee led by James Tracy. Within that, though, whilst he establishes that he does not believe the First Minister has breached the ministerial code, he does say it's for Parliament to consider whether she has misled Parliament, and we're going to have a committee inquiry report tomorrow.
Are your MSPs that look pretty silly?
No, not at all, because what James Hamilton was looking at was specifically whether he believed there was a breaching of the ministerial code. What the committee inquiry is looking at is a much wider unit, looking at the role of government around its harassment policy, and we're going to wait the publication of that report tomorrow.
How this is going to play out, don't you? The government and the SNP are going to rally around this report. It's independents. They're going to betray the partisans, slamming political barricades.
Well, look, I've not played any party politics with this situation from the outset. I've always taken it back to principles. This is not
It was rather cowardly of the Labour Party abstaining.
reflecting well on our democracy, it doesn't reflect well on government, it doesn't reflect well on Parliament, and especially at the time of a pandemic when people want us to focus on saving people's lives and saving their livelihoods, and what we're focused on over the next period is going into that election campaign.
And also, it'll be noticeable as well by tomorrow that I'll be called a racist, even though I'm trying to protect minorities like Sikhs, Hindus, and Christians in Pakistan to stop them being abused and targeted. There's no minority rights over there for these people, for these children being abused over there, which I'll come on to in a second. So that, for me, being a racist, I'm caring about people in Pakistan, but that's me a racist.
For the National Republic of Ireland looks to unite our country, not divide our country.
Do you need any shots?
Just a quick two shot, yeah. Just keep the phone.
Get his trainers in, get his trainers in.
Yeah, these are new back.
So, Kieran, could you talk as if you're asking a question?
I'm a company.
Listen to-
I own a company, a media company.
Yeah, so I mean, they brought forward this motion from Wednesday to tomorrow, I think, so it's all going to happen at the same time.
I think the Tories look ridiculous with all of this, to be honest.
So
So they're not. What they're doing is using the media to besmirch anybody who's an issue for them. Like I'm a centrist libertarian liberal, which I'm just about to say to him here, and he's besmirching me just like I'm going to be besmirched by the papers. This is a deliberate attempt to attack the individual who basically just asking journalist questions. Just asking journalist questions. It's a bit rushed, but it's just basically journalist questions, just asking about various topics in the world and various topics that affect Mr. Sarwar.
No, so we've never said that we were going to support the confidence, but going into an election, we've got a decision to make about whether, we say going into an election, lots of issues we don't have confidence in the First Minister, but whether it's is it going to be clear cut enough in terms of the committee inquiry?
Yeah.
To be honest, I've only seen what you've seen because of the leaks. I've not seen what's beyond that in terms of
Perfect. Thank you very much.
All right.
Hope to see you again soon.
Take care.
So, Mr. Sarwar, can you tell us the names of the three people in Glasgow who were murdered by the Muslim asylum seeker?
So basically, you literally can't find. So this is Google. So you literally can't find victims in Glasgow a hotel stabbing. So you literally can't, none of the victims are named in any there's no names of any victims here, apart from obviously the PC, serious injuries, but there's no names of the actual people that died here. It seems to be covered up. You can look through them all. There's no pictures of any of the victims. Let's see. Look in Google Images. So, okay, there's pictures of the assailant, but there's no pictures of the victims. So we don't actually know who was killed in the Glasgow attack either. So we don't know that. So that's why I was asking him, does he know the actual victims? Because it looks like the stabbings for this have been covered up. He was quite happy to talk about George Floyd, obviously, what happened in America. I was very shocked with the way that I don't think you should be kneeling somebody's neck if you're in the police, but that's just that's certainly something that I would have been definitely on side with. But I don't understand why this is covered up. So I think it's a legitimate question to ask the politicians why there's a cover up and not actually releasing the names or pictures of the victims that were there.
Can you tell us what happened with the rapes of children in Glasgow from fake asylum seekers who were raping kids, and then it was covered up by the actual...
I think you should take your far-right nonsense somewhere.
So he's saying that I'm talking far-right nonsense. Far-right nonsense. So let's have a wee look at this. So YouTube. I'm not far right either. So that's again another thing. I'll come to that in a minute. So here we go. So this is the older one. I've already covered these. And this is the new one. Now, I'll pick the same one up twice. So I'm not discussing far right anything. I'm discussing things that are actually abuses that have happened in Scotland that are basically being covered up. So I get called the racist. It's quite happy for me to be besmirched when we're actually discussing issues of abuse. So basically, to destroy the narrative, I've got to be called the racist when I'm actually discussing legitimate issues of interest that are in the papers, that are not stuff that I'm making up to be nasty to Mr. Sawa. These are legitimate calls. So this is quite old. This is a bit of older. This is 2015, and this is the Express. This is the 8th of March 2015 by Ben Borland in the Express. Exclusive groomers victims failed by system. Now, don't forget, Nicola Sturgeon brought forward cases of not as bad as this to the Scottish courts. But it appears that the SNP have failed these individuals. So groomers victims failed by system as reports expose Rotherham style gangs. So it's easier to call me a racist. It's easier to dismiss me, not answer the questions that I'm asking, call me far right, which is not true. A racist. I don't believe in race. I only believe in the human race. I don't believe people who don't look like me are not part of the human race. I don't believe in race-based politics like Mr. Sawa did there. I believe in the best person getting the job, regardless of their immutable characteristics. And I've already done that. I've already done that when I was employing people. It didn't matter what they looked like. They were able to get the job based on the type of person they were, not what they looked like. So although I'm going to get smirched in the paper, it's not the first time. And this has been done deliberately. It's been done deliberately to destroy me, to have an ability to ask them awkward questions which they don't want to answer. So this is, as I said, this is about 6 years ago. This is a number of years ago. But we're going to go up with the Sun, and we'll see what it says here. Groomer victims failed by system as Glasgow exposes Rotherham-style gangs. So this is what I'm asking about. A report in Rotherham-style grooming gangs in Glasgow exposes a catalogue of concerns about police, council, and NHS managers. So I'm not just making this up. Not just pulling things out of the air to actually ask Mr. Sawa. I'm asking Mr. Sawa about specific issues that are predominantly in the Muslim community. He's a Muslim MP, and he is not prepared to answer these difficult questions. The 36-page review was presented to the Glasgow City Council Community Health Partnership (CHP) on December 17th. A meeting Davy needs to confront Sturgeon in the way he did. You think so? So let me continue. So a meeting attended by top health and social workers from across the west of Scotland. The call called the Rotherham Report Implications for Glasgow. So you saw Mr. Sawa just dismissing me and not answering the questions that I was actually asking him, which this is very serious. This is more serious than what happened to Alex Salmon. This is much more serious. It revealed the sexual abuse of children by, these were predominantly Muslim asylum seekers, grooming children in Glasgow by grooming gangs and this is, it's in the article, and this will actually speak later on with regards to this. By grooming gangs is still being encountered as part of a day-to-day practice. It also detailed a number of serious failings, including Police Scotland have never viewed meetings to discuss vulnerable young people as a priority. So listen to that again. Police Scotland have never viewed meetings to discuss vulnerable young people as a priority and do not have enough officers to attend every child protection meeting. But they have tons of officers to do the thought policing. And we're all getting thought policed, almost like the Stasi. We're getting thought policed, not actually the underlying real problems. We don't have enough people to actually address it. So let me see if I can get a pop-up here. So they're so gross. Well, I'm not disparaging against all Muslims. I used to live with Muslims. Although they're going to call me racist, I loved the Muslims. I lived with them. I lived with Pakistani guys. I certainly didn't hate them because of their ethnic origins or what they call race, which I didn't even see as race, but the ethnic backgrounds. I didn't have any hate towards them. I lived with Indian guys, I've lived with Pakistani guys, I've lived with Muslims in the Middle East as well. Didn't hate them at all. In fact, I really loved them. Bigot. So Neil's calling me a bigot. Thanks, Neil. That's great. I'm actually answering the questions, but you can call me a bigot if you want, Neil. I'm actually asking. I don't know what you call the victims here. Was the bigotry towards the victims? I'm only expressing questions just the same as any other journalist would do. The only person who died in Glasgow hotel stabbing was the attacker. No, there was 3 people killed in Glasgow. Multiple stabbings. 3 people stabbed to death.
Police have been responding to a major incident in Glasgow city centre in the last couple of hours. The latest details that we have is that it is believed 3 people have been stabbed to death in a stairwell in a hotel in the centre of Glasgow.
Right, so it's not about the fact that the guy did that. My point that I'm trying to get to is that we don't know who the actual victims are. This has been covered up. It's been covered up. So I'll do that again so we're all clear. I understand that people die. It's Glasgow. People die in Glasgow. But it's not the fact that the people died that's the issue. It's the fact that no trace is on the internet of who these individuals were. There's no memorial towards them. There's nothing towards them. It's not the fact of people dying in Glasgow, but this is sort of like covered up.
Responding to a major incident in Glasgow city centre in the last couple of hours. The latest details that we have is that it is believed 3 people have been stabbed to death in a stairwell in a hotel in the centre of Glasgow.
Now, this was the week after 3 homosexual men were murdered. Obviously, Islam is... I put this to one of the people as well. One of the journalists today, who obviously the Sun and the Daily Record are both going to write hit pieces on me. So violence in fact, hold on. So my point is it's not about race. And I think that what people are doing is conflating race and religion that I'm talking about. I'm not talking about Mr. Sarwar's race. I really don't care about his complexion or where he's from. People are welcome in Scotland. The issue is the underlying ideology, which is not only a religion but also a political ideology. Death penalty, homosexuals, Islam countries. So, in the Quran, in the Hadith, it says to kill people. Now, the Sultan of Brunei wanted to stone Muslims to death. Now, I don't believe in killing homosexuals. That's my personal thing. So, there you are, there, it just come up. Brunei stoning. So, which place have the death penalty for gay sex? So, Brunei wanted to stone them. So, these are all the countries where laws against homosexuality, but there's a number that actually kill homosexuals or life imprisonment. Where gay homosexuality is illegal. So I don't believe in, because I'm a libertarian liberal, I don't believe in homosexuality should be killed. I don't believe homosexuals should be killed, and I'm pro gay rights. So I'm not against. I'm very much for gay rights, being a liberal and a libertarian. But if you've got an ideology that wants to kill them, have I not now got the right to ask Mr. Sawa, you say you're a Muslim, and it says in 10 countries that follow Sharia law that would kill homosexuals. Brunei wanted to bring in stoning to death of homosexuals. I cannot ask Mr. Sawa what he thinks about this. And he'll call me right, far right, or bigoted. I don't want to kill anybody. I don't want to kill homosexuals because they're homosexuals. I believe their rights should be protected. So, that's another thing there. So I'm against that. So where were we? Banning of child marriage. So here we go. So back to what was happening in Glasgow. Poor communication between various departments and agencies. Sounds like the Scottish Government all over the back. Even within Glasgow Child Protection Committee itself, senior health board managers and councillors are not aware of the scale and seriousness of the current problems. I suggest it's been pushed under the mat. That's why I was asking Mr. Sawa, obviously being the leader of the Labour Party, what he was going to do about it, what his thoughts and what he was going to do about it. But it's me that's the racist for asking about child protection of children in Glasgow. That makes me the racist asking about, is there something in Islam that allows this sort of abuse to happen? But that is racism now. Nothing to do with race. Never mentioned race, never mentioned his colour. But in Islam, obviously sexual slavery for the Prophet Muhammad was involved. And to basically rape women is acceptable. And we already know that the minimum age is 9. So anybody over the age of puberty at 9 is seen as a woman under Islamic law. So this is my point. This is where I was trying to go with this conversation. In recent years, police have carried out 2 investigations into grooming gangs in and around Scotland's largest city, Operation Cotswold and Operation Dash. Police said yesterday the Operation Dash ended last month, February, almost 2 years, with 27 offenders reported to the Crown Office. One culprit, a 20-year-old Afghani asylum seeker, Javed Akon, has already been jailed for 6 years for preying on young girls. Last year, and this is again, they are sweeping it under the carpet and not addressing the issue. So my problem is not where the people come from or that this doesn't happen in other communities. My problem is that the political class or all of the political class are sweeping this under the carpet and not addressing it because they don't want to address the issue. This is my point. Nothing to do, as I said, nothing to do with race. It's absolutely nothing to do with race, but let's keep going. This is to do with politics and being able to hold politicians to account and without being lambasted as a racist, and by other journalists as well. Last year, I was going to go with Paul Hutchins. Last year revealed the child protection officials repeatedly vetoed a significant case review into the widespread abuse uncovered by detectives. The first part of the 17th report was prepared by Moira McKinnon, principal officer with Glasgow Child Protection Team. She said there was a lack of awareness of the CSE's child sexual exploitation in the city, including among staff in residential children's homes. We already know there's a problem in childcare homes just now as well. Some youngsters had even been drawn into the clutches of grooming gangs as a result of being accommodated with other vulnerable people who engage with the CSE. So these are already children who've had a really tough life, and they're then being exploited a second time. And others concerning behaviours. The report reveals that many of the Dash victims were in the care of their local authority, so they weren't protected by the local authority, and that the review of the VYP, vulnerable young people, and CP child protection procedures have been instigated. Incredibly, Ms McKinnon added, Dash has identified that we do not have the correct people around the table at the VYP meetings for the health and police, and these agencies need to review their current processes in light of the learning from Dash. In discussion with police, there is an acknowledgement that VYP had never been a priority. That's community discerning, a priority meetings for the police, and they are unclear about its status. The police are indicating that they currently do not have capacity to attend all CP meetings requests, and attendance at VYP would not be possible within the current staffing arrangements. She added, information sharing needs to improve across all agencies. In Rotherham, Baroness JQC found that police and social workers failed to act against Asian grooming gangs because they fear being viewed as racist, as I'm going to be tomorrow lambasted in the papers for protecting kids. So basically the Daily Record and the Sun are lambasting me for asking questions about child protection. That makes me the racist, which is true. So that whole thing is just played out, that I'm going to be called a racist for asking Mr. Sawa about the protection of children. Okay, there is, but I'm the right wing. I'm right wing rather than actually just being a concerned citizen or concerned journalist. And then I'm lambasted by the actual media protecting Mr. Sawa. Grooming gangs because they feared being viewed as racist. Miss McKinnon states there is learning to be taken from Operation Dash with regards to the management of legal processes with race has been an issue. I would have said there was more religion than race, so I don't agree that this is a race-based issue. I believe this is, well, it could be slightly race because a lot of the victims are white, but I don't think the underlying issue, I think the underlying issue is religion, not race. So I'm not talking about race, although a lot of the perpetrators are not white and a lot of the victims are white. I don't think that that's the factor. And I think it's a religion. That's why I was asking Mr. Sawa, as a Muslim representative, what the situation was. But he just then turned it and said, oh, you're far right. You shouldn't be asking these questions, you're far right. So that's the way to dismiss me and not answer the actual underlying issue. And she concludes that J report is very clear that this abuse is not confined to the past, but continues to this day. So it continues to this day. And we're talking about protecting women here, but we're not even protecting the children who are already in vulnerable situations. Jay is very clear the abuse is not confined to the past but continues to this day, as evidenced in Glasgow through the 2 police operations day-to-day practice. The second part of the December 17th report was prepared by Mary Valent, Head of Child Protection Development with NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde. She said, we need to ensure the senior managers in the NHS GGC and elected members are aware of the scale and seriousness of the current problems. So when I go and ask as a journalist, Anna Sawa, about these problems, about these issues, Mr. Sawa says, it says more about you than it does about me. You're far right. You're racist. Well, I have to say, Mr. Sawa did not call me racist. He called me far right. And he dismissed my questioning and didn't go into the depth of this. They don't have sit-down debates with me, or not debates, sorry, sit-down interviews with me. So I have to go and speak to them face-to-face like I did today. So I hope that sort of clears up. If I was sending letters and they were having face-to-face, I wouldn't be going and speaking to them directly. And it abbreviates the conversation because it then comes across stinted, rather than actually me being able to talk at length to actually elaborate on what the underlying issue is. But it looks like, from my point of view, that they don't want to address the issue, and it's much easier calling me a racist, which I'm not. There's nothing about race discussed in this, apart from the fact that this might be happening from people who are not white to people that are white. I don't think that's the factor. I think the religion's the factor, and this is where they're calling me a racist, even though I didn't mention anything about race. A third part of the report features comments from a range of health and social workers revealing that even children in wheelchairs may fall victim to the gangs, including Alison Rennie, one of Scotland's top paediatricians, wrote, "I am concerned that child protection processes are still quite removed from practitioners working on the ground." She added, within the Glasgow CCP, it is always clear where the lines of communication are in relation to this and how information and learning is shared from this forum. We need to get better at local interagency working between health and social workers to identify vulnerable children and young people at an early age. Last night, Detective Inspector Leslie Boyle said the information sharing meeting was held throughout Operation Dash, first on the weekly and then on monthly basis. She added, in Greater Glasgow Division, any request to attend meetings by vulnerable young persons on child protection meetings are received at a risk and concern hub, where they are assessed by Detective Inspector and most appropriate officer is identified to attend. A spokeswoman for NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde said there is already collaboration working between NHS staff and partner agency staff across a range of services to ensure that vulnerable children across Glasgow are being identified and supported as priority. Although we are already providing training for staff, this report sets out how we can extend this further to help identify children at risk. A spokesman added, there is a very constructive relationship amongst all child protection partners in Glasgow that is helping to protect those at risk of child sexual exploitation, bring perpetrators to justice. Now, as far as I'm aware, I'm going to go into the issue now. So that was in 2015. So I've done that. So this one, so we've done that. So this is now 5 years later, on the 27th of January. This is in the Sun. And so we're now talking about a 5 year span. So this is only last year. And so I don't know what's been done in that 5 years. That's why I was asking Mr. Sarwar the questions. This is why, because I don't know how much has been done. And we'll see in the Sun who are going to lambast me as a racist tomorrow for asking about child protection, about the article that they wrote in the Sun. I'm going to get lambasted. Vile gang, Police Scotland took down large-scale asylum seekers, grooming gang in Glasgow, but kept it secret. So again, the secrecy. So why is all this secrecy? Why are they all keeping it secret? It's easier to lambast me than it is to actually address the underlying issues, isn't it? And it's again with going back to the asylum seeker who killed the people. It's not there seems to be an increasing across Europe disability to murder non-Muslims across it. I mean, we already know this because it's already documented. But what the political class are doing is actually keeping it secret. All these things are now being held secret. So we don't actually know what's going on. And when I ask the actual politicians, then I get lambasted for asking them because nobody else is asking these questions. So it's easier to call me a racist than it is to actually address the underlying issues of the secrecy that they've actually done. Cops took down a huge asylum seeker grooming gang in Glasgow, but kept it secret. Gang preying on vulnerable children in the city had at least 44 victims, 44, including, and that's just one gang, including a core group of 6 youngsters who were all known to each other. It's believed one may have been abused by 20 men. Now, I think, as far as I'm aware, this is a child. This is a child under 16 that's abused by 28 men. Another linked to 23. 55 suspected members of the vile group were identified by officers, with 46 positively identified, and I don't think one has gone to jail. That's my thoughts on it. We were all were asylum seekers from the Kurdish, Afghani, Egyptian, Moroccan, Turkish, Pakistani, and Iraqi communities. So I would suggest that they're all Muslims. So again, that's why I asked Mr. Sarwar, because he's a Muslim, if this was actually relative to the religion potentially, rather, because that's obviously a whole bunch of different countries. The only common factor in all of that is Islam. That's not an ethnic thing, because all of these people are different ethnicities. This is a potentially a religious thing. Again, Mr. Sarwar identifies a Muslim. Is there a Muslim connection with this? Operation, I wish I could get this. Guerilla was kept under wraps by Police Scotland. So it's kept under wraps. So not only the police not sending policemen to actually sit with the vulnerable children or the social workers and the health officials, they're now covering up this investigations, and that's where the Scottish Defence League had a protest, and the police were refused to actually go in and actually record what the actual Scottish Defence League were saying about this, as far as I'm aware. Cops say 19 members were reported to the Crown Office and Procurator Fiscal, but it's unknown how many were convicted. So this is again what I was asking Mr. Sarwar. How many were convicted? What was the situation? But it's my fault for asking these questions, because they don't look like they're doing anything from the reports on the Sun. Now, I don't know if this is the Sun's correct or it's not, but I would suspect that we need to actually get to the bottom of what is actually happening with these vulnerable children. Briefing from 2016 operations are stored in the archives of the Glasgow Child Protection Committee. The horrifying extent of the gang's activities was laid bare in National Abuse Investigation Unit, reported by Detective Inspector Sarah Taylor. 22 of the suspects are still living in Glasgow at the time, with a further 8 still throughout B. That doesn't make sense. 8 still throughout B in the UK. 14 have been deported, with another waiting deportation and 1 in prison. Well, at least some of them have been deported. And I've been deported as well, don't forget, from a country. And certainly what I did was incidental. Well, sorry, what happened to me was incidental compared to this. I was attacked by a taxi driver who I paid, and he lied. So what I did was incidental, but this is horrific. Under the heading Victims, the report, this is worse than what Alex Salmond did. This should have been a priority for Nicola Sturgeon, but obviously not. Obviously, abuse of children is not a priority for Nicola Sturgeon. Under the heading Victims, the report states Girl 1, 28 suspects, Girl 2, 23. Now, I think these are children in care. Girl 3, 9 suspects, Girl 4, 8 suspects, Girl 5, 4 suspects, Girl 6, 1 suspects, all known to each other. 20 other named girls believed to be victims. A further 18 girls were identified through the course of the current investigation. Cops say they used disruptive tactics, including intelligence gathering, covert policing, financial and lifestyle profiling, looking at the suspects' associates, vehicles and employment. DI Taylor said the officers had used all investigative opportunities to pursue all known offenders, including involvement in current criminality. They also used grooming and trafficking legislation, preventative orders and immigration status to take down the offenders. They also had support from Glasgow City Council, UK Border Agency, Bernardo's, who are questionable, HMRC and the Scottish Environment Protection Agency. Asked why Operation Guerilla was not made public. A police source said, "We need to be very clear that we always carefully consider when and what information released in relation to ongoing investigations, protect vulnerable victims and the integrity of the inquiry." So I don't think there's been anybody actually successfully prosecuted from this. Oh, there I am there. moment Salwa harassed by racist bully before fuming ITV journalist stepped in. I'll get to the fuming journalist in a second. Detective Inspector Laura Carnockin, of the National Child Abuse Investigation Unit. We are committed to investigating all reports of child abuse, which includes child sexual exploitation. We want to reassure anyone who has suffered abuse that we will listen. Our investigations are always victim focused and victim led, and we will ask our partners in support services to assist our child abuse investigation, provides specialist support for the investigation of complex child abuse and neglect across Scotland. However, part of our success in delivering child protection is our local officers working in partnership within their communities. Child abuse, including child sexual exploitation, is a complex and challenging area of policing, and we owe it to all children, whether now or in the past, to thoroughly investigate each and every report we receive. Anyone with information on child abuse is asked to contact police through 101. We always carefully consider what information to release to protect vulnerable victims and the integrity of the inquiry. So that's basically where I was going with the questioning. So that's the guy against it. So what are you saying? Not a good look, Jess. I see they've written a piece about in the Sunday calling you a far right racist. I know, yes, not a good look. Yeah, well, they can literally do anything. They can literally do anything. Typical media blowing up. Yeah, well, I'm trying to give you a balanced approach in what this is. So I'm asking you. So this is where I'm going with this conversation with Mr. Sarwar. I'm not far right and I'm not a racist. And I'm a libertarian liberal, which I'm just about to say to Mr. Sarwar. But as you can see so far, I've not said anything of a racial nature to Mr. Sarwar.
I would think that somebody that supports as a Muslim who supports a prophet who had sex with a 9-year-old girl and had sex slaves, I think that's more of an issue, is it not?
So there you go there. So and I'm sure this is the hadith. Sal al-Buhari hadith is the hadith says that the Prophet married her when she was 6 years old, and he consummated his marriage when she was 9 years old. Other sources differ on the age of marriage, but agree that the marriage was not consummated at the time of marriage contract. So obviously that's an issue as well. So I'm saying exactly what is in the Quran. I never said anything far right or anything else. This is exactly what every source that I've shown you is the questions that I'm actually asking. Sex slaves. Islam, I don't know if this is correct. Islam permits men to have sexual intercourse with them. I don't know who them is. And there is no limit to the number of concubines, which is sex slaves, female sex slaves, taken in war. So that's what was happening to the Yazidi, and they were becoming sex slaves and being sold in the market for sexual slavery. Unlike, but I mean, it's anybody who's a non-Muslim that can become a sex slave. Unlike the polygam, where there is a limit of 4 wives, polygamy, where there is a limit of 4 wives, the master can also sell the sex slave or gift her to someone else. The female slave was essentially chattel. Now, this obviously still goes on today with ISIS, so this is a direct relation back to the Prophet Muhammad in Islam, that he had sex slaves in there. So sexual slavery is part of Islam. So again, everything I've said, you can check it for yourself. Don't believe me, check it for yourself, is correct.
In my right-wing nonsense, I'm actually a centrist, libertarian, liberal.
So I just said there, I am a centrist, libertarian, liberal, which I've already done my political compass test. Is up on the Guerilla TV channel. It says that I'm underneath the horizontal line is libertarians, and down the centre, and just slightly centre right, is libertarian liberal. So I'm basically a centrist libertarian, and he thinks that's far right. I think that says about where Mr. Sawar is on the political spectrum. So this is when I'm going to say to him with regards to where he stands in the political spectrum and what Labour Party is becoming.
To be honest with you, you I think, are a member of a globalist Islamo-Marxist party.
So globalist Islamo-Marxist party, or GIMPs. So he's allowed to call me far right, but I'm not allowed to ask him about his political leanings.
Excuse me, I just want to say I was witness to something about a Muslim.
Sorry.
So this guy, out of nowhere, has rescued Mr. Sawar from me asking questions that are pertinent and that are on the internet, and me to actually ask Mr. Sawar. So up to this stage, I've said nothing about race, racism, calling Mr. Sawar anything. The only thing that I've discussed is Islam, what it says in Islam, what's already up on the internet, what the cover-ups have been, the child abuse, and this character has just appeared out of nowhere to start shouting the word racist at me. And this is a journalist interfering with me journalising. So if I jumped on his broadcast for ITV News, he would be quite happy with this. I was having a conversation with Mr. Sawar. Mr. Sawar looked happy enough, although he probably didn't like the question. As you said, as you can see, he didn't answer one of my questions. But this absolute dweeb has now come up and white knighted for Mr. Sawar. I don't know if he's a Labour supporter or what the situation is, or if he was just trying to white knight. But up to that stage, I've said nothing about race or abused Mr. Sawar. All the things I've said are to do with the Quran, him being a Muslim, and what is happening with Muslims in Pakistan and not protecting minority rights, and also what's happening in Scotland with abuse by Muslims of children in Glasgow. So none of it's been racial, nothing about that. This is about what it says and what they are doing as the politicians to protect children in Glasgow. And is there a question mark between that and Islam? So I hope I've explained it better now. I've got time to actually sit down. If I was asking somebody questions, I'd be able to go into more depth with regards to that. So yes, so they've basically smeared me in the papers, calling me X, Y, and Z. But I've not said anything of a racial nature to Mr. Sawar, which I'm just about to point out to whoever this guy is. So
it's on tape. We're going out live. We're going out live anyway, bud. Sorry, we're going out live.
Well, if you're live, I want all of your audience to know I was witness to you making a racist comment.
So he just said I was witness to you making a racist comment. Now we've just gone through everything from the start of me seeing Mr. Sawar to this point that he's now said that I've said something racist towards Mr. Sawar, which I haven't said anything racist. I've not said anything of a racial nature. I don't think Mr. Sawar is a different race anyway. I don't believe in race politics. I think Mr. Sawar is part of the human race. And I'm not talking about race, I'm talking about religion here and what it says in the religion. So he's just come out here and just talking absolute nonsense.
Islam's not a race, buddy. Islam's not a race, it's a religion, and it's also political ideology.
So he's now protecting Mr. Sawar from asking questions with regards to me asking about child protection in Glasgow and other aspects that are relative to child protection and child protection in Pakistan. And he's saying that I'm a racist and I said some racist. Never said anything racist. I never said anything bad towards Mr. Sawar at all. I was merely asking him about what has actually happened. Now, you can do your own homework in this. You can do your own research and see if I was correct in what I was saying. But I don't know who this absolute dweeb is. Who is this character?
Is it crossovers?
It's we're an actual thing as well, pal. So don't worry about that. We're actually
So I don't know who this guy is. I don't know if he's a Labour supporter or he's connected to that. I think he's put the feel out amongst the other journalists in the protection of Mr. Sawa as the Labour guy. But the Labour Party's falling. The Labour Party's going down in the polls as well. And now we've got Mr. Sawa who can't answer questions that were based on fact on the internet. Mr. Sawa can't even ask these. And we've got Mr. White Knight here who is saying that I said racist things when we've just gone through the video and I've not said anything racist to Mr. Sawa. I mainly asked about what is happening about children in Glasgow that Mr. Sawa doesn't want to answer.
Company as well.
So we are a company just like ITV. So there's no difference between us and ITV. So why is he jumping in the middle of me talking to Mr. Sawa? I wasn't threatening Mr. Sawa. I was just having a pleasant, an interesting conversation with Sawa. Mr. Sawa didn't look stressed at all until this character just showed up. How rude. Can you imagine him filming and I just jump in the middle of his broadcast for ITV and start abusing him and lying and saying that I've said things that I've not said? And now it's in the papers that I'm going to get lambasted in the press calling me a racist when I've not said anything racist. So they're able to lie about me and destroy the reputation, just like they did with Alex Salmond, and then they can get away with this. This guy is a real piece of work. Not so much Mr. Sawa. Mr. Sawa's not really said anything, which is not to his credit as a politician and not addressing the difficult topics. This guy is just a piece of work, this character.
Don't have to worry. It's got to put on the internet anyway. It's no problem.
So I said that it's all getting streamed live anyway. So I don't have anything to fear from this when people actually watch this. I've not said anything abusive, been rude to Mr. Sawa. All I've asked him about is actual political points that are actually being brought up.
I just want you to know that there's more decent people than you, okay?
So he's now giving me my character, that there's more decent people than me. So when I'm actually asking Mr. Sawa about child protection in Glasgow, and if there's a connection between the abuse by a specific religion abusing people, children, vulnerable children, he thinks that there are better people out there than me. Is it you? What have you done, Mr. Smith? That's Peter Smith. What have you done, Mr. Smith, on this issue to be a better person than me?
Oh, is the decent? Can I just ask you a question then, sir? So let me ask a question.
No, now I'm a racist. Now he's just throwing about the word racist. So obviously tomorrow that's going to be thrown about tomorrow. And I said that I don't believe in race. I don't believe that people are a different race. I believe there's only one race, the human race, and I don't believe in race-based politics. But this guy does. So I think this guy has been put in there because of his race-based politics. He's shouting racist at me. Never said anything racist. We've just gone through the video from the moment I met Mr. Sawa. Never shouted anything racist at Mr. Sawa. Just talked to him about political issues. But this guy thinks he can jump in front of in my interview. Wasn't abusing Mr. Sawa, just speaking to him. And this guy can just start shouting racist and there's better people than me. And I mean, really, honestly, what a horrible individual. I think Mr. Peter might be gay as well. I'm not casting aspersions. That's not an aspersion. There's nothing wrong with being gay. But the worrying thing for me is if he was in a Muslim country and one of the 10 that actually execute gay people, that this would be a big problem for him. And I'm trying to address it and speak to people in a civil manner. But he's he's just shouting racist and all sorts of stuff at me because he's part of the media class that don't want any answers to these questions. We don't want these questions being asked, even to the point where people are being murdered and brutalised like these children. But he's the big brain here.
Let me ask you, no, Islam's not a race, sir.
So Islam's not a race. Islam's not a race. And it's the human race. So I'm going to say this anyway on this. So I've not talked about race, but this guy's just shouting racist. I mean, it's just absolutely crazy. This guy is absolutely certifiable.
I'm not a racist.
Were you?
All right, you're a racist. You're a racist. Look at his face. That's a frightening face. And he's just saying racist. I don't even think he heard the conversation. I don't think he heard the conversation I had with Mr. Sawa, which had nothing to do with race. But to silence me, he can just shout racist with no bearing on the underlying conversation I had with Mr. Sawa.
You're a
Islam's not
racist. You can say what you want about Islam, but you're a racist.
What?
So you can say anything you want about. I don't know this guy. This guy's never met me in my life. He doesn't know who I've helped out in the past, who my friends were. He's never met me. All he's doing is shouting racist, and with no point of context. Doesn't know who I am. I think he's friends with Paul Hutchins, who also said that was a racist talking about Islam as well. So I think him and Paul Hutchins are friends, and I think they might be part of the Labour Party's media mechanism, and that's why he jumped in to protect Sawa. That's my gut feeling on this. I think he's probably a Labour Party member or connected, and he's actually like a political hack. So when I ask the difficult questions to Mr. Sawa, he's actually protecting them from a political ideology, and it's easier for the left to shut down any legitimate questioning by shouting the word racist, which is a non-word anyway, because obviously it's the human race, and people who don't look like you aren't a part of a different race.
Right, so can I ask you a question then, sir? What was the murder of the people in Glasgow by a Muslim? Can you tell me their names? Was that?
So I was just asking for the media cover-up. Again, I've shown you. You can look for yourself. You tell me the victims' names. So they've actually covered it up. So they're now trying to cover it up when I'm asking questions. So I've asked him a question. He's part of the media. He's part of ITV. Interfering in my interview and speaking to Mr. Sawa for no reason. Nothing racist been said. And he's just jumped in the middle of my my interview. So he's just, if I jump in front of his interview when he's broadcasting in ITV, that's acceptable, isn't it? So that's why I was saying that this is a business, just like his business. So if I jump in front of ITV's business, that's acceptable. That's no journalistic integrity there. But he can dismiss me and just say racist, and just over and over. You'll see what happens in a minute.
A racist attack, sir? Well, you seem to know all about race.
I know.
So he's saying, he's calling everybody racist, which nothing was racist. And now he's just saying that I'm a racist. He's never met me before.
Racist when I see one.
Do you? Well,
I know a racist when I see one. Well, I think it was Mr. Sawa that was making there was too many white people in various levels of employment, which rather than actually saying how can we get more people from various minorities in Scotland in various positions, is there a problem there? Is there an underlying structural problem? He's just saying white, just like Anna Sawa did. Now, I would never say that about any other ethnic minority in Scotland as well, but it's easy for them to do that. That's what the left do. It's just to shut down, and that's where I'll be smirched tomorrow all over the papers as well.
Islam's not a race, sir.
So Islam's not a race. It's just not a race. It's a human race as well, and Islam is not a race. It's a political ideology and a religion.
Islam.
So you would be saying, if I criticise the Labour Party, now that's racist. So that's what they can do now. If I criticise somebody who's different from me, they can just close the argument down or any sort of debate in it by shouting this word racist at you. Even if there's nothing racist we mentioned, like in this conversation. This guy's just popped up out of the blue.
Islam's a religion and a political ideology. How?
And a political ideology. So that means if you criticise the Labour Party, that could be classed as racism under this loonball's definition of racism. Oh, come on.
Can you be racist against a political ideology, sir?
And I'm being pleasant, being nice to him. But he's not answering because he doesn't have an answer. He doesn't have an answer because he doesn't understand. He's just jumped in there and white knighted for Mr. Sawa, protecting him after me asking questions. So this is this character.
You're not answering, so you don't know because it's not a race. So you're just making things up, aren't you?
I don't want to say it was right. Let's see what the comments are. What you guys are saying. What's the difference? That's good publicity in the Sun. Typical mind blowing stuff up. Yeah, of course it is, mate. Of course. Muslims, masterpiece for hard working. Brunei stoning. So I see. I don't redact that, Gavin. So I don't know what the situation. I don't take out comments, so even if they're dismissive comments. I remember this predicted years ago. No, that was the initial news report. Look, sources a day afterwards. After the attack, 6 were stabbed and hospitalised. No one died, other than the attacker. That's interesting. So that's interesting. That's a good point. 3 dens. BBC blasted for reporting 3 deaths in Glasgow. Oh, that's very interesting. Well spotted. I actually didn't know this. This is just new information. That probably explains why these weren't. So if Mr. Sarwar said there was nobody killed in this incident, then that would have answered that question very succinctly. So the BBC blasted for false reporting 3 deaths in Glasgow stabbing, which explains why there was no victims. The BBC have come under fire for reporting false information during Friday's stabbing. 6 people were injured after. I think that's fortuitous anyway, but still 6 people being stabbed with regards to this, after 3 people murdered the week before and 3 gay men in London were murdered. I still think there's even getting 6 people getting stabbed. So it was the BBC that made the false report. So as far as I knew, up to this day, up to just now, there was 3 people killed. So that's very interesting. So I've seen the BBC's approach, and that's all I've known. So there wasn't, but even still, 6 people stabbed. Any one of them could have died as well. It's still a point of contention. So Mr. Sarwar would only need to say there was nobody killed, and I would have looked like a turkey at that questioning. I would have looked like an absolute fool. But even I wouldn't have looked that much a fool. There's still underlying 6 people attempted murder by 6 people. Although obviously false reporting by the BBC now. While the BBC's news channels made it clear in an initial aftermath of the news there was limited information available, it was eventually reported there had been confirmation of 3 deaths. Broadcaster Home Affairs Danny Shawn reported online that he had heard from Whitehall sources 3 people had been killed in the attack, 2 having been fatally stabbed and another being the attacker. Interesting. Who was shot. But the point, I don't think this is the point. Even regardless of whether that was successful or not, I think we've now seen 50 foiled terrorist attacks. So this is up to 2015. So this doesn't include the last. So this is from 7/7 to July 2015. So that doesn't include the last 6 years. And that there has been. This is in the BBC. That there's been 50 foiled deadly terrorist attacks have been stopped since 7/7 bombing 10 years ago. So I don't. Even though, and there's also been underlying other attacks as well. that have actually happened as well. On 752 people died, with 4 bombs were detonated in London. So, although it's good the fact that nobody else has been killed, there certainly is an underlying issue here, and that's not including the last 6 years. And that's another. And then the week, as I said, the week before, there was 3 people murdered in the park. So I don't know if that's counted as a terrorist attack. I don't know if this has been counted as a terrorist attack. So there are, even though the fact, I'm glad that there's been no casualties, and that explains why there was no victims or signs of victims. Obviously, the misreporting. You can make mistakes in broadcasting as well, and so I don't hold them to an account if they thought genuinely that 3 people had been killed. I thought it was 3 people had been killed and the guy. That was my impression from what I'd heard. Obviously, I'd heard from the BBC, but it still doesn't matter. That's still 6 people that were stabbed inconsequentially, and we've seen 50 other people. As I said, the week before, there's been other stabbings and things that have happened as well. And the issue is not about the stabbings or the deaths. My stabbings is about the underlying ideology that actually promotes this. So what are we doing? So okay, that's interesting, but that's very interesting. But even still 3 people killed. So there's been a number of 3 people killed in Glasgow. So there's been a number of publications, 3 people killed in the stabbings in Scottish Glasgow City. So that's in 2026. So obviously that was the complete misinformation. So killing the homosexuals. So this guy's still white knighting. So I've not said anything racist against Mr. Sarwar. I've just asked him political questions based on what's actually happening, the abuses just now that are happening in Scotland with regards to, and what the connection is their connection to Islam. Nothing about race, nothing about racism, nothing about othering. I'm just asking him general questions.
Have you read the Quran? Have you read the Hadith in the Quran? I've lived in the Middle East. So you don't know what you're talking about, do you, sir? Exactly, okay, exactly. You know when you've been here. Yeah.
So I'm just pointing out the fact that he obviously doesn't know what he's talking about. He's just interrupted, and I'm a bit annoyed, obviously, from him interrupting when I'm talking to somebody. How rude of him. And then calling me a racist, which is abuse. I don't know whether being called a racist under the hate speech bill is going to be justifiable. Is he able to just say, are the papers able to slander me even though I've not said anything racist, and he's able to slander me saying that I'm a racist, and I've got no comeback, legal comeback. I can't put people in court to actually justify this, and calling me a racist, there's no justification there.
Yeah, Mr. Sarwar, can you tell us about the rape of Christian children in Pakistan, sir?
So I'm talking about religion, and it's not just Christian, it's Sikh and Hindu as well. So I'm not talking about, it's not ethnic differences, it's based on religious differences. So, Pakistan, Christian children raped and converted. So this is February 5th, 2020. So this is a Forbes article. Yet another girl abducted and forced to convert. So that's the 8th of May. So this is all on the internet. So I'm asking him questions that are pertinent to Pakistan. He's Pakistani and Islam. Yet it's better not to ask these questions, because you're just going to be described as a racist, because that's all they've got just now. That's it. So this is Forbes, Dr. Yulin U. Okhab. Yet another girl in Pakistan abducted, forcibly converted, and forcibly married to her abductor. So I would say that this is very serious. So me concerned about what's happening in Pakistan with these children is me being racist. apparently. There is obviously an underlying issue. At the end of April 2020, a 14-year-old Christian girl, Myra Shabazz, was reportedly abducted and forced to marry in Faizabad, Punjab, according to International Christian Concern. Maya Shibaz was abducted by, sorry for murdering these names, by a group of Muslim men led by Mohammed Najquest. So this is happening in Pakistan, and we're wondering if this has been imported here. So that again, this is not about people's race. This is about the underlying religious identity, and if this is an issue that we should be concerned about. The eyewitness claimed that Maya abductors forced her into a car and that Maya tried to resist. The eyewitness were unable to help Maya because abductors were armed and fired several shots into the air. Maya's mother, Nijhat, told International Christian Concern. Now, this is happening to Sikh and Hindu children as well. It's not just, and this is allegedly from the information, this is happening in the hundreds, that she fears her daughter would be raped, force converted to Islam, or even killed. Unfortunately, her concerns are not far-fetched. According to the Movement for Solidarity and Peace, MSP, a human rights organisation in the country, around 1,000 Christian and Hindu, and thinking Sikh as well, women and girls are kidnapped each year, forced to convert and marry Muslim men. The victims are usually between the ages of 12 and 25. Despite these shocking statistics, the number of victims may be even higher, as many cases remain unreported, often due to the girls' families' limited financial means. As recently as March, I wrote about the case of another Christian girl, Huma Yunus, 14-year-old at the time of her abduction. Huma was allegedly abducted from her parents' home in Karachi on October the 10th, 2019, by a man named Abdul Jabbar, or Dira Jiza Khan, Punjab province. Others known cases from recent years include a Christian girl, Memish, who was kidnapped when she was just 14. It was reported that the police had not taken appropriate steps to investigate her case or attempted to rescue her. Sounds a bit familiar over here. The same is true for the case for a 13-year-old Christian girl, Sana John. Two teenage girls, Farzana and Shirish, aged 14 and 16 respectively, were abducted and subjected to gang rape perpetrated by 3 Muslim men, despite the fact that one of the perpetrators were apprehended and the family was pressured to settle the case outside of court. Similarly, a case of Maria Sharfraz, a 11-year-old girl abducted and gang raped for 3 days, was forcibly settled out of court. Considering the damning date for MSPs, there are many more stories like these which are yet to be heard. The latest information in the case of Maya Shabazz suggests that she was forcibly converted and married to her abductors, although a national database and registration authority certificate has been produced confirming her age. A marriage certificate contradicts this, stating her age as 18. A type statement was also produced, allegedly made her stating that she left her home and married willingly. This case is yet to proceed through the courts. However, this does not mean the justice will be served and the girl will be reunited with her family. Indeed, the reports suggest a variation of approaches to such cases concerning abducted, forced and conversions and forced marriages. For example, in the case of Huma Yunus, despite Huma being underage, her conversion and marriage was not invalidated by the court. The case is to proceed to the Supreme Court of Pakistan. In another case, Nazir versus judicial marriage, the Lahore High Court recognised that an underage girl lacks legal capacity to convert. In the case, Nazira, a Christian woman had filed a petition for her minor daughter, Puma Muskan, to recover from the alleged illegal custody of people referring to in the judgment as the respondent of number 5 and number 6, and dealt with the accordance with law respondent number 5 and 6, employed the 14-year-old girl Puma Muskan as part of the household. After a few months, when the mother went to meet Puma Muskan, respondents 5 and 6 told her that Puma Muskan was with the sister of respondent 5 in another city, and having embraced Islam, did not want to see her mother anymore. Another lengthy legal battle. Ultimately, the Lahore High Court decided that Puma Muskan is barely 14, and as she is not sui juris, she lacks legal capacity to change religion on her own. However, the question of faith being a matter of heart and one's conviction, so the court can declare the conversion invalid or void. It can only refuse to recognise or give effect to it for certain legal purposes. The petitioner the petitioner being the lawful guardian of Puma Muskan is entitled to her custody. There is no reason to deprive her of that. Many such cases of women and girls being abducted, forcibly converted, forcibly married, and abused by their abductors continue to be neglected by the police and the judicial system, a bit like what's happening here in the UK. This only allows further crimes to be committed, a bit like what's happening here in the UK. But asking Mr. Sawar about this is apparently racist to Mr. Peter Smith. Every child deserves a child. Pakistan needs to step up its approach to deal with such cases and ensure proper investigation and prosecution of perpetrators and reunification of children with their parents. However, a change in society is also required so that abduction of a child, forced conversion, and forced marriage are considered abhorrent. There is still a long way to go. Okay, so that was that question. That's why I asked that question as well. So I think that's very serious. And obviously, Mr. Sawar has got family back in his family, was the head of the governor of the Punjab. So he's got people back there who are actually connected in politics. Brunei stoning. Oh, here we go. Check the nick of you. Check the nick of you. That helped. Aye. How is Anis capable for abductions in Pakistan? I never said Anis is capable. I was asking him questions. I do journalism, so I asked him questions. I didn't say you're held. It's your fault. I asked him about if there's a connection from what's happening in Glasgow to the attitudes that are being imported from the religion, not about just Pakistan, the religion and what the religious context is with the abuse of children in Glasgow and also the cover-up. It's blaming. I'm not blaming Anis. I never blamed Anis. I was asking him specific questions. I didn't say this is your fault. You're to blame. Any saying white supremacist kills 10 people in Colorado. Today's MSN headlines after they realised it was an Islamic attack. Colorado shooter was bullied by white supremacists. Is that a joke? Is that actually happened, Elizabeth? Is that a joke? Is that you've been satirical? Oh, what was it? 10 killed Colorado. 20 minutes ago, Colorado suspect got assault weapon 6 days before shooting. So they're calling it a white supremacist shooting. The suspect accused of opening fire in Colorado. They're calling it a white supremacist thing. Oh my goodness. See, that's it. So the go-to just now is call anybody a racist, anybody a white supremacist, and not address the underlying issue. Weapons bought. So these people just going about there. Alicia, who is from Denver, suburb of Arvada, was booked into a country jail Tuesday on murder charges after being treated at hospital. Wow. Wow. Unbelievable. So we'll just finish this off. I don't think there's much to go.
No.
So he doesn't want to answer any questions. So he's quite chummy with him. So this wee gimpy guy here is Mr. Smith is just rushed over and protected Mr. Sawa. I don't know if he knows about the 10 people that have died in Colorado from a gun attack by apparently a Muslim. But I can't say that, obviously. That's me being racist, apparently.
Sorry, it's all on the internet. It's not a secret.
I mean, honestly.
I'll see you again, Mr. Sarwa. Nice to meet you.
Very pleasant.
Sorry, buddy, it's going on the internet. I'm not hiding.
You're not only a racist, but you're a bully as well.
I'm a racist and a bully. So this guy's just throwing about. So if this was like racial abuse, say for instance he was calling me, I don't know, whatever he would call me, say, will this come under the hate crime bill? So he's allowed to abuse me in that way, but that's not part of the hate crime bill. So he can just say anything nasty he wants to me, and that's I'm not protected now. We've just gone through it, and I've not said anything racist. Not said a word that's racist about it. I was asking him on specific issues, and he's calling me a racist and a bigot for trying to do journalism, and that's him being far left and just trying to close me down, but when he wasn't even privy to the conversation there.
I'm not bullying anyone.
Yeah, you're quieting down when other people come out there.
Now he's standing in front of camera crews, and I don't think I've quieted down at all. I don't think I've quieted down. I actually came over and spoke to him, and I was trying to keep it quiet because there was other people. I was respectful to the other journalists who were filming, as you go about to hear.
No, the guy, she's on live right there.
So I'm trying to be respectful to the other journalists, and this guy's shouting a buffoon, shouting like a buffoon, just charged up. I don't know who this guy, thinks is. What an absolute clown of a guy.
If you want to talk to him, I'll talk to you over here. If you want to talk to racist.
So he's just called me a racist for about the umpteenth time. Nothing that I've said there is racist at all. But he can just slander me. It's basically, he's slandering me by just repeating the word racist over and over again. Quite incredible.
You're racist.
No, you don't deserve the time of day.
So I don't deserve the time of day. So he's just decided by interfering in my conversation, none of which was racist, that I don't deserve the time of day. Look at his face. He looks like he's on coke.
I'm trying not to be time. That's what I said talk over there. Respect.
Trying to be respectful and talk to him in a journalistic manner. I'm trying to be nice.
Islam's not a race, pal. Islam is not a race.
So he's been very rude. Just a really terrible guy.
Do you understand? It's not a race. And it's the human race as well.
You can say what you like.
So it's the human race. You heard me say it. It's the human race. So I don't believe in race-based politics. You heard it there.
I can say what I like. That's right.
I can, and I will say what I like. Not what I like. I'm saying things deliberately because there's points that I'm trying to get across, like any good journalist would do. Not that he would know.
But no, you're a racist.
That's right.
Oh, I'm a racist. Just shouting racist this, racist that. Okay, well, let's go and actually have a look. Origins of the word racist. I don't know who these guys are. The Oxford English Dictionary first recorded utterance of racism. And what I'm going to say is the word racist, not racism. Was by a man called Richard Henry Pratt in 1902. Pratt was railing against the evils of racist segregation, which I don't believe in. I don't believe in segregation either, although they seems to be bringing it back in America through a different way. Segregation, any class or race of people apart from the rest of the people, kills the progress of the segregated people or makes their growth very slow. Associations of race and class is necessary to destroy racism and classism, which comes from Marxism. So his in 1902 was after Marx writing the various books that he wrote in the 1830s to 40s. So this was after. So this was already based on potential on Marxism. Although Pratt might have been the first person to inveigh against racism, against racism and its deleterious effects by naming it by name, he is much better remembered for a very different coinage, and it's not what I'm interested in. So, let's see in Reddit, see if we get anything interesting in Reddit. That Trotsky invented the word racist and thus a concept of racism. So this is actually coming. Told you Nicola would be cleared. Well, I don't know if she's been cleared, Scott, to be honest with you. She's still guilty of lying to the Parliament, so she's not really cleared. The whole point was of breaking the ministerial code and actually lying to Parliament, which she's already been told in this Fabinini report that she's going to be found guilty of. So she's not really been cleared. Trotsky did not invent the word. So here we go. The censor and anti-Semitic. So this was 1924 Daily Oakman 2686, and the censor and anti-Semitic declared this part of the picture for pro-Jewish propaganda and said it could be. I don't know what this is. It could not be permitted in a Christian racialist country. I don't know what this is. It's not what I was looking for anyway. So the word that actually comes, I'm sure, was invented by Leon Trotsky, and it came in I think it was in this. So, as far as I'm aware, it came in Lionel Trotsky. So it's a communist invention, this sort of word racist, and it's very much to browbeat anybody who is maybe a liberal like myself, and they just try and browbeat you with this word, even if it's not relative. So this guy seems like this fella, whoever his name is, seems like he's a far left operative.
Hey, I can see what I like, buddy.
So I believe in free speech.
There you go. Very interesting. the left are trying to pass off Islam as a race when it's a religion and as well as a political ideology. So that's what you get here.
So I'm not going to go into the political side of Islam, but Islam and politics and the political structure are integral. That's why there's Islamic parties. So, and that's a big issue now creeping up in Europe. We've already seen people being killed, beheaded in France, and now we've seen 10 people getting killed today in Oakland, apparently by a Muslim gang.
Just now, but they're not prepared to talk about any of the wrongdoings within Islam. They're not prepared to actually have proper adult conversations about what's actually happened. Hey, Mr. Sarwar, is it the hate speech bill, is that going to apply to Islam, Mr. Sarwar?
So I've walked away from Mr. Sarwar, so obviously I've given him space and walked away. Mr. Sarwar backed the hate speech bill, which I'm asking if the killing homosexuals or killing apostates, or whether that sort of hate and actual advocation of violence is going to apply to the hate speech bills. But I can pretty much guarantee you it's not. So it's going to be one rule for one for another.
You take care of yourself, buddy.
I will, don't you worry, Mr. Sarwar. I will, I always do, Mr. Sarwar.
So I've been very polite, no issues there. And I didn't actually have a problem with him. But as you can see, he's not actually answered any one question. And I've not been rude to him, and he's been perfectly polite as well. So there's not an issue between Mr. Sarwar and myself. I would actually talk to him again, to be brutally honest. He was perfectly polite as well. But the other guy was a complete joke.
So I noticed you didn't answer any of the questions though, Mr. Sarwar.
Which is a fair comment.
So, all up tonight, no answers to the questions, but the children raped by the Muslim asylum seekers in Glasgow. No answers about who the people were that were murdered in Glasgow by the Muslim.
So I didn't know that was wrong. So I took it off the BBC, so wrong information from the BBC. I may not hold the BBC accountable for saying that, but that's where I got the mistake, and that's why I was curious why there was no victims on that. So the initial mistake was done by the BBC. So thanks very much for correcting that. But there's now 10 people killed in America. So, and there's been people beheaded in France. And I mean, I showed you even just a part of what's been happening in the UK. And I'm not including the mass rapes throughout the rest of the UK.
Muslim as well. No answers to any of these questions, and then you get called a racist for just asking these sort of questions.
So again, getting called a racist for asking questions about Islam. So Islam's a race now, obviously, even though there's white Muslims.
It only works one way, isn't it? So I don't even know what to say in the back of that. Absolutely terrible, and that's the leader of Labour. Obviously my family were platers and textile workers, and it just shows you how far Labour's fallen. To have somebody that can't even answer questions. I mean, if you're in politics, you would at least answer questions. I mean, it's suspected that was, and apart from getting shouted racist, because obviously Islam is a political ideology as well as a religion. So it just shows you they want to shut down any conversation, because it's obviously a fascist, a totalitarian political ideology as well. It's quite fascist in its outlook, as well as being misogynistic and wants to kill gays and things like that. So that's what we've got as the head of Labour, unfortunately. So, very bad. So is Mr. Sarwar away in there.
Perfectly respectful. And I've just shown you why why I asked the questions. I've shown that I wasn't racist to Mr. Sarwar. In fact, Mr. Sarwar and I actually had a relatively pleasant conversation, apart from the dum-dum from ITV guy jumping in, being very rude. So they were legitimate questions. Now we've seen 10 people died in America, killed in America. And no answer to the questions.
So, really, really bad. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. That just shows you what's in charge of Labour now.
Well, my baby gorillas, I was just tuned out there. I was impressed with my own impressness. Guys, thanks very much for standing by. Check the nick of you. Yeah, well, so I don't mind people being despising about me. It doesn't. I don't care. Check the nick of you. Well, that's nice. How is Anis? I never said he was culpable. I was asking him general questions about political topics. That's what they're meant to do. They're meant to answer the questions, and you're meant to get a response from them to identify if there is, just like Channel 4 was doing. But obviously, the media are just softballing politicians, and they don't want somebody who asks real questions to ask them real questions. It's much better for the other, like the Sun and the Daily Record, which we'll do tomorrow, to smear me and destroy my reputation. But I hope I've put forward the case and let you understand why I asked the questions and what I was saying. And there was nothing about race until that doughball from ITV jumped in and started calling me a racist, which I think is quite abusive, to be brutally honest. He wasn't privy to the rest of that conversation. Anyway, my baby gorillas, I love you guys. That's it. Thanks very much. Even the ones that didn't agree with me, I hope I actually clarified what I was saying and why I was saying it.